You are walking home alone at night. A dog barks somewhere in the dark. You feel your shoulders drop. Somehow, that sound makes you feel safer, not more afraid. That reaction is not new. It is at least 15,000 years old. Most people assume humans chose to tame wolves, feed them, train them, breed them into something gentler. But the real answer is far stranger. Your ancestors may not have domesticated wolves at all. The wolves may have domesticated themselves. Picture a hunter-gatherer camp near the end of the last ice age. Fires burning, meat scraps scattered near the edges. Somewhere in the tree line, eyes watching. Not all wolves would approach that firelight. Most would stay far away, too wary of humans to risk it. But a few wolves were different, slightly calmer, slightly less afraid. Those wolves crept closer, picked through the scraps, and slipped away before sunrise. Why does that matter? Because those slightly braver, slightly calmer wolves got something the fearful ones didn't. Easy calories, less energy spent hunting, a survival edge just from tolerating human presence. Evolutionary biologist Raymond Coppinger studied this exact idea for decades. His theory was simple but radical. Wolves were not tamed by people sitting down and training them. Wolves tamed themselves through scavenging. The calmest individuals kept coming back. Generation after generation, camp after camp, natural selection quietly favored the wolves who could stomach being near humans. Here is where it gets strange. This wasn't a slow, deliberate partnership. It was accidental. Humans weren't trying to create dogs. They were just cooking, eating, and leaving waste behind. The wolves did the rest. But scavenging alone doesn't explain everything. Calm behavior isn't the only thing that changed. Somewhere along the way, these proto-dogs also got better at reading human faces, human gestures, human moods. Anthropologist Brian Hare ran a series of experiments on this exact question. He tested dogs against wolves and even chimpanzees on a simple task. Point at one of two cups and see who understands the point means, look here. Dogs got it almost instantly. Wolves, even hand-raised ones, mostly didn't. Chimpanzees, our closest genetic relatives, struggled too. That result stunned researchers. Somehow, dogs had evolved a very specific social skill, reading human intention, not through intelligence alone, but through a personality shift. Calmer, friendlier individuals were, without meaning to, also becoming better communicators. Hare called this a byproduct of selecting for tameness. When you select an animal for reduced fear and reduced aggression, other traits tend to come along for the ride. Floppier ears, curlier tails, patchy coats, and apparently an unexpected talent for understanding a pointing finger. Sound familiar? It should. Because your ancestors were changing too. This is the part almost nobody talks about. The wolves weren't the only ones being reshaped by this relationship. Some researchers argue that humans change just as much. Paleoanthropologist Pat Shipman has proposed something called the animal connection hypothesis. Her argument is bold. Humans didn't just adapt to their environment, they adapted by forming alliances with other species, and those alliances gave certain groups of humans a serious edge. Think about what a semi-tame wolf actually offered a hunting band 20,000 years ago. Sharper senses of smell, faster reflexes, the ability to track a wounded animal for miles, or to sense danger approaching camp long before a human ever could. A group with wolves at their side wasn't just protected, it was outcompeting every group without them. That is not a small advantage. That is the kind of advantage that reshapes an entire species' future. Genetic research backs this up in a strange way. Evolutionary geneticist Robert Wayne, working with mitochondrial DNA from ancient and modern canines, helped establish that dogs split from wolves far earlier than most people assume. Not 5,000 years ago. Not even 10,000. Some estimates push the split back over 30,000 years, long before agriculture, long before permanent settlements, long before humans had any concept of selective breeding as we understand it today. Does that number matter? It changes the whole story. It means dogs weren't a byproduct of farming villages needing herders or guards. They emerged deep in the hunter-gatherer era, among small bands moving constantly, sleeping in the open, surviving one hunt at a time. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If your ancestors weren't deliberately breeding these animals yet, who was really in control of this process? Maybe neither side was. Maybe this wasn't a story of humans dominating nature. It was co-evolution, two species shaping each other slowly without either one planning it. There's a modern experiment that makes this idea impossible to ignore. In Siberia, starting in the 1950s, geneticist Dmitry Belyaev began breeding silver foxes, selecting only the calmest individuals in each generation to breed forward. Nothing else. Just tameness. Within a few generations, those foxes began developing floppy ears, curled tails, patchy fur. Some even started barking. Traits nobody was selecting for directly. Traits that simply arrived once fear and aggression were dialed down. That experiment is still running today, decades later. And it lines up almost perfectly with what likely happened around ancient human campfires. Calm behavior comes first. Everything else follows. So here's the modern mirror. Every time you feel a wave of comfort from a dog resting its head on your lap, you are experiencing the tail end of an evolutionary bargain struck near a Paleolithic fire. Every time a dog looks at you, then looks at the thing you're pointing at, it's using a skill that didn't exist in its wild ancestors. It's using a skill that evolved specifically because early dogs needed to understand you. You didn't build that connection alone. You inherited it. Your ancestors weren't master trainers reshaping a wild predator by force. They were, mostly without realizing it, participating in one of the oldest partnerships our species has ever formed. Not human over animal, human beside animal. And maybe that's the real reason it still feels different when a dog is near. Not obedience, not ownership. Something closer to an old agreement written into behavior long before either species had words for it. So the next time a dog barks in the dark and your shoulders drop on their own, remember what that reaction actually is. It isn't random comfort. It's 15,000 years of two species quietly agreeing to survive together.